Well, hi again. As you know, these videos are about my stroke recovery that has been ongoing since I suffered a stroke on Christmas Eve 2018. And a good question to ask is, how do I really measure success in terms of recovery? And that's really an interesting question, and something that frankly is going to take more than one video to cover. Initially, I looked at it only from a physical recovery perspective because it was so profoundly affected physically. I mean, losing complete use of my right side, at least temporarily, was pretty horrifying, as you can imagine. And there is actually a scale of physical recovery called the Brunston scale that has 7 steps to recovery. And looking at it, it's very good for what it is. But my experience has been that when I had a stroke, it affected virtually every aspect of my life. I mean, the physical was only one of them. It affected me spiritually and psychologically, financially, in every way you can imagine. Socially, affected my personal beliefs, my faith system, everything took a pretty major shock, and it's taken a long time to sort out a lot of that and really try and figure out, well, how am I doing now compared to earlier? For example, even though I might have some physical capacity that has recovered because of the way I feel, for example, I've been really afraid of falling ever since I had the stroke. So even though I'm physically better than I was, I still have a pretty serious fear of falling down. On the other hand, there are other ways I've recovered that I'm just about back to normal in terms of the way I function, even though uh, I can't perform exactly the same actions that I used to. For example, I only have one hand to help me get dressed, but I can still dress myself. So I've recovered in terms of functionality from a practical sense, if not from an actual physical sense. And anyway, it's very, very much a complex question. And how do I know when to celebrate a success? How do I even measure it? It's really kind of hard sometimes because a lot of the recovery is so gradual, it's so slow that I don't even notice it, especially in terms of mental capacity. It was easy at first, for example, with my reading. I could barely read the first month or so after the stroke. I mean, I could recognize words, but I didn't really know what they meant. And then I went from being able to identify words to trying to put together sentences, and then from sentences to paragraphs, and paragraphs to stories, and then to more complex stories. But I mean, quite seriously, for a while after the stroke, I was reading children's stories because that was all I could comprehend. The important point, though, was that I was reading and I continued to work at it. And as my brain slowly recovered, I got back to the point where I found myself after a couple of years reading some fairly complex texts and being able to assess them critically. Say, well, okay, this author's right about this, or he already made that point, or blah blah blah. So that was good. And spiritually, um, it's also been a matter of going from confusion and hurt and other aspects to accepting sort of new realities. So anyway, it's really a multidimensional question. How do you measure recovery? And as we go forward with these videos, presuming I do, and I hope I will, I'll look into some of the different aspects of this. But believe me, the physical is only one part of it. And I'm not even sure it's the most important part of it. So you may know I recently did an interview for Silver Sneakers, and they asked me how it is I keep going. And, that's a very complex question. So you can find that video on YouTube if you search for Silver Sneakers purpose, I think will get you to it. So anyway, that's all I want to say for the moment. But stay tuned because as episodes go further, we'll talk about my progress in terms of how I've really recovered as a human being, not just as a mechanical device. So, once again, I'm sure you've had issues, problems where you've had to recover from major changes in your life. And how did you measure recovery? Did you celebrate every step, every minor step? I try and celebrate everything because it's so nice to make some progress from what seemed like such a hopeless situation. So let me know. As you know, I like email, I like comments. So let's hear from you. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.